An Airbus 380. There's enough people subbed to fill an Airbus 380. Oh my god. No, I'm not at an airport, although I have been busy, but I did notice the internet's sudden fascination with B-roll. Rewind just a year and a half and people on the internet probably couldn't tell you what B-roll is. Brawl? Roll? So I figured it was time to find out which lens in the Micro Four Thirds world would best help you make some B-roll. Today we're testing two of my picks for best bang for the buck B-roll lens. That's the Panasonic 25mm 1.7 and the 42.5mm 1.7. So before anybody jumps to the comment section, yes, these lenses are in different price brackets, but I do take that into account. And for today's video, the winner will ultimately be decided by three factors. That's shallow depth of field, versatility, and usability or practicality. Before we get started on shallow depth of field, if you aren't well versed on how to get a blurry background, brush up on the video link below. For minimum focusing distance, the 25mm has the edge. That brings us to the second point, focal length. In real life, the 42.5mm can get much closer to subjects because of its longer focal length. The 42.5mm has the edge here. In terms of aperture, both lenses are tied with f1.7, so no winners for this aspect. So overall, the 42.5mm wins the shallow depth of field category. Now moving on to versatility, while having a lens for B-roll is great, it'd be better if that lens could serve multiple functions. Aside from being a B-roll lens, the 25mm is great for portraits and is just about wide enough to be used as a general purpose lens for photos and videos. On the other hand, the 42.5mm is also great for portraits and counters back with some light macro capabilities. So overall for versatility, I'm gonna call this a tie. Now lastly, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that my favorite category is usability or practicality. One of the biggest differences between these two lenses is OIS, or optical image stabilization, where the 42.5mm has it, but the 25mm doesn't. Now if you have a stabilized body like the G85, the GH5, the G9, or any of the Olympus cameras, this isn't gonna matter too much. But if you have a non-stabilized body like the Lumix G7, this is gonna matter a lot. The 25mm footage is usable without a stabilized body, but you definitely have to try not to get those little jitters. The 42.5mm mounted on the G7 is also usable handheld with much less jitters, and I find that it's easier to get shots with this lens even if it's longer. So overall, the 42.5mm wins here. Now in terms of autofocus, there's really not much between the two lenses. For stills, they're both insanely fast. For video, they're very Lumix autofocus for video, which is to say, no. Like if you know what that means. Anyway, for autofocus, it's a tie. Lastly, you can't use a lens if you can't afford it, which brings us to the last point, price. The 25mm is literally less than half the price of the 42.5mm right now. Now in my opinion, the 25mm is an absolutely great lens for anybody just starting out in video or photography. You just can't beat it for the price. Now summarizing usability or practicality, the 42.5mm wins in terms of stabilization. In terms of autofocus, it's a tie, but the 25mm takes the cake for price. So overall, in terms of usability, I think I'm gonna have to give the edge to the 25mm. So just recapping this whole video, in terms of shallow depth of field, the 42.5mm takes it. In terms of versatility, both lenses are tied, and in terms of usability or practicality, the 25mm takes it. And so the award for the best bang for the buck B-roll lens goes to, there you go, a conclusive, thing. So it's a tie, but if you've already got some miles on your belt, and you're looking for that next step up in terms of B-roll, get the 42.5mm. It's got a shallow depth of field, it can do semi-macro shots, and its stabilization really helps whether you have a stabilized body or not. But if you want the absolute best bang for the buck B-roll lens, get the 25mm. At $150, it's hard to beat something that can blur out the background and be wide enough to be used as a general purpose lens. You're gonna have to work harder to keep shots steady, but when you get the shots just right, there's no denying the results.